The law was older than memory. It was recited before the twin suns rose, repeated at every gathering, engraved on the city's tallest spire in 20 alien dialects: never challenge the humans, never harbor them, never even speak their name outside official recounting. No one remembered the first reason why, only that those who broke the law vanished. The elders insisted it was for the good of all. Even the youngest hatchlings sensed the fear in their voices when humans were discussed. It was a fear that never faded, even as centuries passed and other threats came and went. On this world, tradition held power above all. Those who dared question were silenced with a look, a whisper, a warning. For most, that was enough. Not for all. Among the young warriors in training, a few rebelled in small ways, questioning the old stories, daring to ask what humans truly were. Among them was Syrah, daughter of minor functionaries, born with a restlessness the instructors tried and failed to crush. Syrah had spent her years listening at the edge of assemblies, watching the way elders' mouths tightened whenever a child asked, "Why such fear?" Her own parents warned her not to question, not to draw attention, to accept what was told, and stay silent. Still, she dreamed of other answers. The city itself seemed designed to keep curiosity at bay. High walls, guards at every gate, ritual upon ritual, all to distract from what lay outside. Syrah watched the rituals, joined in the recitations, but her mind wandered. The forbidden woods beyond the city's northern edge fascinated her. It was there, they said, that the last human was seen, where the elders had saved the world by sealing the border forever. Every day was the same. Work, train, repeat the rules. Never ask. Never stray. Syrah obeyed, but her thoughts grew sharper. She studied old texts in secret, finding references to wars, trade, alliances, all erased, then replaced with one message: avoid humans at all costs. They were painted as monsters, deceivers, corruptors, not for their violence but for the way their words took root and grew in the minds of others. Syrah wondered what words could be so dangerous. Her doubts became a private companion. At night, she would climb to the edge of the city's barrier, staring out at the forest's shifting darkness, wondering what was hidden, what was true. The elders claimed the outside was poisoned, full of madness, impossible to survive. Yet plants grew tall and strong beyond the wall. Sometimes, Syrah thought she saw movement, flashes of color, shapes that didn't belong, a fleeting sense of possibility that the world was larger than the elders allowed. One evening, the city was hushed by a strange sound, high and thin, cutting through the usual hum of life. Syrah left her quarters and joined a handful of others in the central square, looking up. A streak of fire split the twilight sky. It fell fast, trailing smoke and light, vanishing somewhere in the forbidden woods. The elders acted quickly, sending the watch to investigate. Their return was hurried, faces shadowed, orders terse, everyone inside, all exits sealed, curfew enforced. Syrah saw their fear and knew it was not just the law that kept them vigilant, but real danger. As the city settled into uneasy silence, Syrah's mind raced. She replayed the elders' words, remembered the warnings, but a deeper urge pushed her forward. She slipped from her chamber, careful to avoid the watched patrols, and made her way to the city's outer wall. There, the barrier shimmered faintly, a relic of old technology, meant to keep danger out and curiosity in. She waited, timing the patrols, recalling stories of those who tried to leave and never returned. But the image of the falling light, the possibility that something, someone, had come from beyond, was too much to ignore. With a steadying breath, she slipped through a crack in the wall's foundation, moving into the woods. Her senses sharpened in the darkness. Every sound was magnified: the distant call of night birds, the rustle of wind in tall grass, the low hum of energy from the city's barrier behind her. She moved quietly, trusting her training, heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Hours passed. She followed the faint trail left by the falling star, scorched leaves, broken branches, the metallic scent of something foreign. At last, she reached a small clearing. There, half buried in earth and moss, was the wreck of a craft unlike any she had seen. Its surface was blackened, edges twisted by heat, but a faint light pulsed from within. Syrah crouched, uncertain. The law thundered in her memory: never challenge, never help, never trust. But then she heard a low, pained sound from inside the wreck, a voice, not quite like her own, but clear, full of desperate need. In that moment, fear and curiosity battled in her mind. The stories said humans were monsters. The voice sounded weak, pleading, almost human. She stepped forward, feeling the weight of tradition behind her, but the pull of something greater: compassion, defiance, the spark of rebellion. Her hands trembled as she reached the craft, peering inside. What she saw changed everything. She knew, then, that she could never go back. The line had been crossed, the law broken, the first step taken into a story older than the city's spires, older than the law itself. Syrah's choice was made. She would help the stranger, no matter the cost. And so began the end of silence. The human was a mystery wrapped in pain. Syrah hesitated, pulse racing, as she studied the battered form inside the ruined craft. Blood, darker than her own, stained the torn fabric of a suit she could not decipher. The human's breathing was shallow and labored, lips moving in half-formed words she didn't understand. There was no way to call for help without sealing both their fates. The law was absolute, but the living being before her was undeniable. She worked silently, improvising with the knowledge she had gleaned from forbidden books and training drills. She remembered stories of human anatomy, half-truths, rumors that painted humans as impossibly tough yet heartbreakingly fragile. Cleaning wounds with water from a nearby stream, she wondered if the stories about human resilience were real. The human flinched as she tried to remove a jagged piece of metal from his side, but didn't cry out. He watched her with fever-bright eyes, suspicion and hope flickering in equal measure. The days blurred together as she shuttled between her home and the forest, hiding her secret with increasing skill. She fashioned crude bandages, used leaves and resin to slow the bleeding, and scavenged food she thought the human could eat. The risk of discovery was constant. Every footstep in the woods, every distant shout from a watched patrol, made her heart seize. Yet the human grew stronger slowly, his wounds knitting with a stubbornness that surprised even her. Communication was their next challenge. He spoke in broken phrases, sometimes gesturing wildly when words failed. She answered in simple terms, drawing shapes in the dirt, miming intentions. They built a language of necessity. A gesture meant pain. A nod meant yes. A closed fist over the heart meant thanks. She learned his name, Mark. He learned hers with awkward gentleness. Trust grew in small increments. Once she caught him studying the sky with a look that bordered on worship. Another time, he pointed to the city lights beyond the trees and whispered a word she understood. Home. There was longing, but no demand. She sensed that he was as lost as she was, both exiles in a world built on rules they could not accept. Mark tried to help in his limited ways, repairing a broken water container with careful hands, teaching her a simple knot that held fast where her usual ties failed. He smiled at her attempts to mimic human words, laughed softly when she scolded him for standing too soon. Laughter was rare in her world. She found it contagious. Fear, however, never left. Each time she returned to the clearing, she imagined a watch patrol waiting, the elders' icy voices reading her sentence aloud. She dreamed of her family shamed, of her parents whispering her name in horror. Yet she could not stop. The cost of inaction felt greater than the cost of discovery. Mark's recovery quickened. He spoke more often, voice still hoarse but filled with curiosity. He asked about her people, their customs, the laws she would not discuss. Instead, she asked about Earth, about human cities, about the wild, rebellious spirit she'd read about in forbidden books. He told stories and gestures and fragments, tales of explorers who crossed oceans, people who questioned orders, heroes who stood alone against impossible odds. Syrah listened, enthralled. She recognized something of herself in those stories, a small, defiant light refusing to go out. One night, Mark struggled to sleep, shivering from the damp. Syrah covered him with her cloak and sat close, whispering the old lullabies her mother once sang. He listened, quiet, then responded with a song of his own, a low, melodic hum that seemed to reach into her bones. Two worlds, two histories, two songs woven together in the dark. In that moment, she realized the elder's deepest fear was not violence or conquest, but connection. The ability to bridge worlds, to ignite hope in the face of law and tradition. Their bond deepened, wordless yet profound. He trusted her with his life. She trusted him with her secret. She began to understand why her people were so afraid. Humans inspired not because they dominated, but because they changed those around them, awakened courage where none should be. She saw the spark growing within herself, unstoppable, and wondered how long it would be before others noticed. Supplies ran low. She took greater risks, stealing food from storage huts, trading with outcasts, bartering trinkets for medicine. The tension built with every trip, every close call. Yet Mark refused to let her face the danger alone, insisting on helping despite his lingering wounds. Together, they became resourceful, finding new ways to hide their tracks, using the environment as their shield. She began to think of them as a team, united not by law but by choice. Days turned to weeks. The forest, once threatening, became their refuge. She caught glimpses of herself in Mark's stories, defiant, restless, unafraid. The more time she spent with him, the more her old life seemed distant, the rituals and recitations hollow. Mark's presence forced her to see her world with new eyes. She realized how much had been stolen from her by fear, curiosity, laughter, even the right to help a stranger in need. One morning, as dawn crept through the trees, Mark managed to stand on his own, leaning heavily but triumphant. They shared a silent celebration, a look that said more than any words could. In that moment, Syrah understood she had crossed a line she could never return from. She had broken the law, not for thrill or rebellion, but because she could not abandon someone who needed her. The price would come, but she was no longer afraid. What began as a rescue had become a quiet revolution. Each day with Mark transformed her, burned away her doubts, and kindled a hope she had never known. She could not imagine turning away. The world beyond the city walls felt larger, richer, and more alive than anything the elders had promised. Syrah knew, deep down, that her actions would echo far beyond the forest, and that the story of the fool who challenged the law was just beginning. The illusion of secrecy could not last. Syrah's movements grew strained as suspicion in the city intensified. Rumors whispered through the streets about missing supplies, strange tracks in the woods, the flicker of an unidentifiable light in the distance. Patrols increased, and the watch began interrogating anyone seen near the northern boundary. Sarah's absences were noted, her excuses thinner each time she returned. The pressure mounted, a silent noose tightening around her world. It was not betrayal that undid her, but a small mistake, one overlooked fragment of foreign cloth snagged on a branch, discovered by a young acolyte gathering herbs. The city's response was immediate. The artifact was delivered to the elders, who recognized its origin at once. Syrah's family was questioned, their loyalty dissected and found lacking. She was summoned to stand before the council, a rare and ominous command. Wordless fear gripped the city as the elders assembled in the Hall of Edicts. The watch brought Syrah before them, bound and silent. Her parents' eyes reflected heartbreak and resignation. The elders demanded confession. She gave it freely, refusing to cower, her voice steady as she admitted her actions. She had crossed the barrier, she had helped the stranger, she had defied the law not out of malice but conviction. Her honesty sent a ripple of unease through the audience. Some looked away. Others studied her as if seeing her for the first time. The elders did not rage or curse. Their disappointment was quieter, colder. They spoke of the law as sacred, built not from hatred but from ancient wisdom, forged by terrible memories of human influence. To help a human, they said, was to invite corruption, to risk the unraveling of everything their ancestors fought to preserve. Syrah listened, but what struck her most was their fear, not of death or violence, but of ideas that might spread. They questioned her about the human's intentions, about what he'd said, what he'd promised. She described Mark's pain, his stories, his resilience, his refusal to surrender even as his life ebbed away. She explained that he had not sought to conquer or deceive, only to survive and connect. This answer unsettled the council further. One elder asked if she regretted her actions. Syrah answered that she regretted nothing except the necessity of secrecy and the cost of compassion. As judgment loomed, Mark himself appeared at the edges of the assembly. Weak but upright, he crossed the threshold without fear, his presence a defiance that electrified the hall. The watch moved to intercept, but he raised his hands in peace. His alien words rang out, translated haltingly by Syrah. He claimed no vengeance, no threat, only gratitude and the belief that what Syrah did was not wrong. He spoke of human history, how kindness and rebellion had always changed his people for the better. He thanked the elders for their caution, but urged them to consider that the law could not erase the spirit of those willing to do right. His testimony did not move the elders. Their verdict was unanimous. Syrah was guilty of forbidden contact, endangering the city's stability, and must be exiled beyond the barrier. The sentence was meant to terrify, alone in the wilds, forever separated from kin and community, an example to all. Her family was forbidden to speak of her again. The city was to forget her, erase her memory from the chronicles. Mark tried to protest, but the watch restrained him. Syrah met his gaze, sharing a wordless promise neither the watch nor the elders could break. She did not cry. She did not beg. In her composure, others saw what the elders feared most, defiance that could not be suppressed. The ritual of exile was ancient. She was led beyond the walls, stripped of all but basic tools and clothing, watched by silent crowds who were told to look away but did not. The forest beyond the barrier loomed, not as an abyss but as the beginning of something unknown. Mark escaped his captors in the chaos of her expulsion, following at a distance, refusing to let her vanish into oblivion. That night, as the city attempted to restore order, small conversations ignited among the young. Questions blossomed about what Syrah had done, what Mark had said, what the elders might be hiding. Some wondered why exile was preferable to understanding. Others felt the first stirrings of dissent, not from anger but from a quiet awe for someone who had risked everything for the sake of another. Syrah and Mark found each other at the edge of the woods, sharing few words but understanding everything that needed to be said. The certainty of punishment had become the beginning of freedom. They moved deeper into the wilds, side by side, two exiles who had chosen connection over fear. Their story would not be contained by city walls or erased by decree. Syrah felt the embers of change smoldering behind them. The elders' greatest fear was not in the laws being broken, but in the possibility that others would follow. As dawn broke, Syrah looked back one final time at the city's towers, shrouded in the old lies. Ahead, the world spread out, untamed, uncertain, but alive. She knew her choice had set something in motion. She was no longer just a foolish girl who had challenged a warning. She was the beginning of a story that would travel on the wind, pass from whisper to whisper, until even the most obedient would have to decide which side of history they belonged on. They moved through the forest, step by cautious step, leaving behind the city's lights and all that once defined safety. Survival demanded focus. Syrah and Mark rationed food, scavenged for water, learned to trust the rhythm of the wild. Mark's limp grew less pronounced each day, and Syrah's instincts sharpened, drawn from a well of determination she never knew she possessed. Fear was constant, but it did not rule them. The absence of comfort became a forge for something new, resourcefulness, a fragile optimism, an unspoken pact that neither would let the other fall behind. At first, their absence caused only brief murmurs in the city. The elders claimed the threat had been dealt with, that the example had been set. The daily rituals resumed, but the city was not the same. Quiet conversations lingered after the assemblies. Some young warriors remembered Syrah's questions, her unflinching stance before the council, her refusal to apologize for compassion. The elders' confidence was brittle, held together by fear and habit. Dissent grew like weeds between stones. Syrah and Mark found others at the borderlands, outcasts, the curious, those who never fit the mold. Their small camp was hidden, but word of it spread. The exiles gathered in twos and threes, drawn by rumor and hope. Syrah was cautious, but necessity forced her to trust. She listened to their stories, felt the hunger for change that echoed her own, and saw how Mark's presence stoked their imaginations. He spoke with simple words and open gestures, describing what he knew of humanity, resilience, innovation, the refusal to yield. They were not alone for long. From the city, patrols ventured farther and more often, tasked with rooting out the corruption the elders claimed threatened their way of life. Some patrol members never returned, others defected quietly, unwilling to drag friends or siblings back for punishment. Fear gave way to curiosity. Those who risked approaching the camp found not chaos but cooperation, not violence but possibility. Mark taught what he could, building shelters, gathering wild plants, repairing tools with patience and ingenuity. Sarah's leadership grew, fueled by the trust she inspired. Stories of the forbidden rescue gained momentum, carried by those who slipped through the cracks in the old order. The tales shifted in the retelling. Sarah was no longer a solitary fool but a spark. The law, once absolute, seemed suddenly vulnerable. Elders tried to stamp out the unrest, but every attempt only fed the flames. Parents questioned the wisdom of condemning kindness. Youngsters, once eager to repeat old slogans, now asked for explanations. What was truly so dangerous about the humans? Why had so much been hidden? What else was forbidden, waiting just beyond the wall? The movement became a current that could not be dammed. Sarah and Mark realized the only way forward was to keep moving, to outpace the patrols and reach distant communities, to plant seeds of dissent wherever they could. The old world's borders blurred. The wilds were no longer a place of punishment but a network, a lifeline. Along the way, Sarah felt herself change. The line between defiance and hope faded. She saw her own people's strengths more clearly: loyalty, adaptability, yearning for truth. She understood that rebellion was not about rage but about offering something better, a future worth risking everything for. Mark's health stabilized, and his gratitude was quiet but unwavering. He told Sarah that her people reminded him of early humans, forced by necessity to build something new in the face of fear. He reminded her that stories outlived the laws meant to silence them. Sarah's courage spread, not by force, but by example. Each person who joined them became a living answer to the elders' greatest fear, that one act of kindness could unravel centuries of control. In the city, the elders' grip weakened. Protests began in whispers, grew into open refusals to attend rituals. Families questioned sentences handed down for trivial defiance. Old allies of the elders wavered, unsure if loyalty outweighed survival. The exiles' camp flourished, its numbers growing with each passing week. Some elders attempted negotiation, others threats, but none could reverse the slow collapse of obedience. The people wanted answers. They wanted stories, about the rescue, about the world outside the walls, about possibility. Sarah stood at the heart of it all, changed and unbowed. She was no longer just the example of failure. She was the leader of something that could not be undone. Mark remained by her side, a constant reminder that change is born from connection, not conquest. Together, they forged a new path, uncertain, dangerous, but more alive than anything the old world had offered. The city's walls remained, but their power faded. Sarah knew there would be no quick victory, no simple ending. What mattered was that the story had changed. The law was still spoken, but now it sounded hollow. The people had seen a new way and could not unsee it. Hope, once forbidden, spread from the wilds to the heart of the city, unstoppable and bright. The age of silence was over. In its place, 1,000 voices, 1,000 choices, each a challenge to the warnings of the past, each a step into the future they would make together.